All right, good afternoon. We'll get underway. Thanks again for coming to the Lubar Center, Marquette University Law School, Eckstein Hall. I'm Mike Goucher, and this is On the Issues, our continuing series of conversations with news and policymakers, people who are doing interesting, important work in this region and beyond. Today, we are joined by the CEO and Artistic Director of Milwaukee Film. We're going to be talking about the Milwaukee Film Festival with Jonathan Jackson today. The Milwaukee Film Festival has become a big deal, and we're going to spend some time talking about that. But we'll also talk about the larger mission of Milwaukee Film in our community. It's going to be a very entertaining, interesting hour. We're delighted you could be with us, and let's begin by welcoming Jonathan Jackson to Marquette Law School.
Thank you, Mike.
So the festival gets underway, and we'll talk more about this a little bit later in the program, begins on the 18th of this month and wraps up on November 1st. So first of all, thanks for being with us. And I think people in this room would want to know how a guy ends up running the Milwaukee Film Festival. So are you one of these folks who knew you loved movies from the time you were just a little one?
I very much. I loved entertainment. I love movies. I love television. Not necessarily the kind of movies we show in the Milwaukee Film Festival. I grew up as a huge fan of Hollywood blockbusters and watched a lot of really bad television. And it wasn't really until college, and it was actually a dorm room roommate. And this is my first college that I attended in North Carolina, where a person wasn't going out partying every night of the week. Mm-hmm. And he was staying at home reading books and watching movies. And I'm just like, what is this guy doing? And that was the first time I ever saw a Stanley Kubrick film, first time I ever saw an Ingmar Bergman film, first time I ever saw a Woody Allen film, and was just introduced to film as art. And I just caught the bug instantly, started making my own work. And that's ultimately what led to me to move to Milwaukee and attend the UWM Film Department for its production program here. But that's sort of how I originally got interested in film.
So bring us, take us through that path from UWM to where you are today. What else did you do along the way?
Well, it's fun to share this, but my first night in Milwaukee, about a week before classes started, 20 years ago, actually, this August, I went to the Oriental Theater. And I went to a movie called Pi, which is by Oscar-nominated director Darren Aronofsky. And I had never stepped foot inside a cinema like the Oriental Theater before, and I think I kind of fell in love. And a couple weeks later, started working in the concession stand, selling tickets, cleaning up after Rocky Horror Picture Show. And
there's cleanup after the Rocky Horror Picture Show?
There's a lot. And more. But while I was at the school, I became very interested in not only making films and making sort of more artistic, pretty weird experimental films about leaves and trees and the house I was living in at the time, but I also became interested in showing films. And I started by running the Student Film Festival at UWM, grew it, sold out a show, added 2 showings and screenings, and started learning how to run a film festival. And an opportunity came up to actually take over as a student, programming and operating the UWM Union Theater. So I think it's called now the Union Cinema in Milwaukee, and that's like really a true art house cinema. It's not open 12 months of the year, it's more like 8-9 months of the year. And I ran the operations of the business and programmed it. And that's when a switch flipped for me. Because, I was so entranced with my own work that I was making, and I thought I was doing these really interesting things. And my eyes suddenly got open to the amazing amount of film work that's out there in the world today that, let alone I wasn't seeing, who's totally interested in this, invested in film, passionate about it, but the community of Milwaukee wasn't seeing. And I literally have not made another film since I started programming at the UWM Union Theater, and I switched to become incredibly passionate about sharing films with people, sharing great films with people, building community, building excitement, building interest around the screening of cinema, and sharing that with Milwaukee. So at the Union Theater, I did that for 3.5 years as a student. That led to being hired to program artistically the Milwaukee International Film Festival, which ran for 5 years. And when, for various reasons, that hit a troubling road 5 years in, was hired to lead Milwaukee Film 5 years later, and that was 10 years ago till this fall.
So as a festival that is now in its 10th year, are we still a young-ish festival?
We still are, absolutely. I mean, I still consider us a bit of a startup, and part of that is because we're doing so many different and new things. The film festival has become pretty well established itself, but we are pushing so hard to try new programming in the festival itself, but also year-round. Most of our peers now, the festivals that we compare to around the country or around the world that have, our attendance or our budget size or our number of staff are 30, 40, 50 years old. We're by far the youngest of all of our peers, but yet the trajectory is just pointing sky high, but it still does feel young to me.
You're young, but for a startup, you're not small. You scaled up pretty quickly in 10 years, did you not?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of our board members are here today. They know from looking at the budget growth over the last couple of years, we've about doubled in the last 2 years in size. We had 57 year-round employees as of the last payroll, and we have about 130 total staff to mount the film festival every year. And so the complexity of running that business is there's quite a breadth to it today.
So it's safe to say that we're, in terms of tickets sold, we're one of, what, the top 10?
Top 10 in the
festivals?
country, yep.
In the country. How many tickets last year?
86,000 attendees to the festival. And in terms of tickets, it's somewhere around 60. I can't say exactly.
So you show more than 300 films. You will show more than 300 films at this.
Are you planning to see all of them, Mike?
Every single one. There's this election thing that might cut into one or two, but beyond that, we should be okay. I'm wondering how you go about determining what people see at the festival. How does that process work?
It starts with going to film festivals. Our team in total will probably go to over 20 film festivals this year in the lead up, in the selection process, in identifying films to show in the festival. What you'll see, and there's program books for everyone when you leave, but there's actually literally 18 different programs that all the films are broken into in the festival. And each one of those programs has sort of a different programming philosophy, a different group of people curating the selections and picking what to show. And the general idea is we just want to present the best 15 days of cinema that you're going to see anywhere in the world. Literally, it's like, why can't we do that in Milwaukee? So what we strive to be is not necessarily a festival that is the absolute first to show a film. Mm-hmm. We're more so a festival that very picky and choosy about which films we show. We look at which films are showing at the most film festivals, which have won the most audience awards, which are critical favorites, and we try to cover as wide an audience and genre base as possible for the festival.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you have kids and you want to take your kids to see films, there are films specifically for younger audiences.
And it was fun. There was a screening, I think it was like year 2 or year 3 of the film festival. There was a documentary on a girls' rock camp. This is a pretty popular program today. But it was the first time we showed it, and then all of a sudden there were a bunch of teenage girls and even younger girls with their mothers and families coming to the festival, and I was like, we can have families at the film festival? And so that has led to us creating a whole program inside the festival for youth and for families to attend, for grandparents to bring their children to. It's called Rated K for kids. Mm-hmm. And there's films for as young as ages 3+. Kids short, size small, so a group of shorts back to back to back, where for attention spans of youth and everything else, it's a great way to engage them. And it was, when she was 3, it was my 3-year-old daughter's first film viewing ever. And last year I cheated, it was my 2-year-old son's first viewing ever. But in that section, we say 3+, 6+, 9+, 10+. And just to give you one choice for the festival, sort of sneaky hit of the festival this year is a film called Supa Moda. It's a film from Africa that is maybe the most heartwarming film of the year. It's the story of a family in a village that creates an incredible life experience for a girl in the village who's suffering from cancer and is going to die. But they turn her into a superhero by the whole village sort of coordinating all these incredible efforts for her to have a great sort of end-of-life experience. But most heartwarming film of the year.
Literally something for everyone. That's your goal, something for everyone
Absolutely.
At the festival.
And, a lot of festivals have a reputation of being just for a certain cultural elite. And to me, that's not Milwaukee, and that's not what we do here. And we want, in terms of demographics, in terms of age range, in terms of ethnicity and background, the festival's not successful until we truly do serve the entire community of Milwaukee. And that's also like a film like Streaker, which is in the World Views program in the festival. It's a film from Switzerland, all about streakers running onto sports field. And it's the most ridiculous, absurd, dumb, but funny movie you'll see all year. So hope it doesn't give anyone any ideas during the playoffs. So.
You never know. You never know. One of the things that I think has been a hallmark of the festival is the attention that is paid to what's happening here locally. And what I want to do over the next few minutes is show you some clips from several of the films that are going to be shown here. And the first one that I want to talk about with you, Jonathan, is called Science Fair. This will be shown on opening night. And what's great about this is one of the directors is a Milwaukee native, Christina Constantini. Her folks here run a furniture company over in the River West area. I just saw the clips for this. This was like an amazingly entertaining and uplifting film. What can you tell us about it?
Well, it premiered at the Sundance Film Festival and was the surprise winner of the Audience Award for the whole entire film festival, all the fiction films, all the documentaries. It's Christina's first feature film, which is an incredible accomplishment for her. But to me, it symbolizes the core of Milwaukee Film's mission. It's about the positive story of youth, of education, of teachers, and about learning, and excitement about learning. And that's at the core of what we want for the film festival.
You will definitely get a flavor for all of that when we show you the clip. Ryan, if you're ready, let's take a look at Science Fair.
The winner in the category of medicine and
making it to ISA. That's like the big thing. You kind of have that status of being in like the group.
I would say that a lot of people are jealous of me.
On deadlines, I'm awful. I wait until the deadline to start working. I listen to trap music and classical music. As a class after I actually don't listen to classical music that much. I just listen to mostly trap.
So you're not going to cure cancer, you're going to prevent cancer.
Yes.
If you're there just to win the prize, you're missing the point of science fair. You enter into this new kind of world, I didn't even know kind of existed.
It's one of the best weeks of my life, like every time I go there.
Ela tem um sonho realmente de sair, de crescer, e eu acredito que se elas ganharem, as portas talvez não se abriram.
I'm going to be so proud when one of my kids win the Nobel Prize.
Finalists from 78 countries.
countries, regions, and territories around the world.
Think of it as the Olympics of science fair. It will change your life in ways that you don't even comprehend.
Welcome to Los Angeles!
Today's like judging day. So we're gonna get judged for what, like 6 hours today? I don't know.
I had a flashback to Sean Penn with the last guy on there. They kind of, I don't know, they kind of, just a little bit of that. But how do you make that final determination? That will be our opening night.
Oh, that's a great question. There's no simple answer. You know, what we try to do on opening night is to show a film that gets the community at large excited, maybe bring some new people to the festival, but also somehow speaks to what we stand for as an organization. And, you know, it's thrilling. Maybe unfortunately for some in the audience here, the film's already completely sold out. Both screenings of it in the festival.
And this is at the Oriental, correct?
This is at the Oriental. What I will share that is, I'm not supposed to say yet, but we have a new thing that we'll be doing this year at the festival, which is after the festival is over, we'll be doing a best of series of the festival of audience favorites, of sellouts, and that's because, you know, we now run the Oriental Theater, so we have that screen space available. People will have an opportunity to see Science Fair, but I won't share any other titles that'll be in that until they sell out as well. But what I do want to say about Science Fair, a fact that is just so exciting, is Christina, the idea for this movie came to her because she was one of those kids growing up in Milwaukee who competed in that Science Fair competition at university school. She won the state of Wisconsin and then placed third in the entire world in the competition. Oh. And that's what gave her the idea to do the competition.
She knew it was a special event and a story that needed to be told. That's terrific. Again, talking about the local connection here, we're going to talk about a film called Pet Names. And this was directed by a young woman, very young woman, by the name of Carol Brandt, another Milwaukee person, still lives in Milwaukee. What can you tell us about Pet Names?
We're very proud at Milwaukee Film of Pet Names. It is one of the films that received funding through an initiative we have called the Brico Forward Fund. And we launched this about 4 years ago, and it's a $50,000 pool of cash that filmmakers locally sort of compete through for granting process, and Pet Names was one of the recipients of some of that money. Incredibly low budget feature film. I don't know if they officially disclose what it is, but it's definitely less than $100,000. But the film's beautiful. It's a touching story of two 20-somethings trying to sort of understand life a little bit. But it premiered at the South by Southwest Film Festival this year, garnered a lot of acclaim, got a distribution deal. It's already paid back its investors, and this is Carol's third feature film, and she's not even close to the age of 30.
No, not even close, we should say. Ryan, if we could take a look at Pet Names.
You coming?
I want to say yeah, but isn't that weird?
I thought you quit.
This is still quitting, it's just sort of broadening the definition of quitting.
How's your mom?
This is my grad school.
It's good for you to get away for a bit. You've always loved it up there.
Did you skip in town, Bill?
Don't call me a bug. You have plans for today?
No.
When I was a little kid and my family would go camping, my dad, before bed, would tell me these stories about these two kids on this planet called Toasterone. And they'd get into all kinds of trouble, you know, but like Indiana Jones type of trouble. Like they'd always end up okay. And I used to pretend that I couldn't sleep to have them keep telling stories.
What's the plan?
I don't have one.
If you were up here alone, what would you be doing?
Searching for my soul. I went down to St. James Infirmary.
You're afraid to die.
Saw my baby there.
You're pretty morbid these days.
Stretched out on a long white table.
You kind of have to be when you're dealing with my mom.
So sweet, so cold, so.
Sometimes I wish that something bad would actually happen to me. I just want to know if I could handle it.
Let it go, let it go. God bless her.
Sorry.
Wherever she may be, she can search the whole wide world over, and she'll never find a man quite like me. I wish I was a witch.
Again, Pet Names is the name of the film. Carol Brandt is part of something called Milwaukee Filmmakers Alliance.
That's right.
Help us understand what that is.
So this is a new initiative that we launched last year. It is a program of Milwaukee Film, but it is really driven by the community and by filmmakers in the community. So think of it as a trade association that works on behalf of advocating for growing, educating, networking the film industry in southeastern Wisconsin. It is people like Carol making creative, independent, artistic work, but it's also people at Northwestern Mutual making internal video communications. It's people at a television station like MPTV or Milwaukee Public Television creating their work. It's a big growing sector in Milwaukee that hasn't really been fully organized before and is a vital one to our future. Very proud Marquette University has been a supporter of the Milwaukee Filmmaker Alliance. Dave Murphy has been deeply engaged in the effort. And we think that this is a growing sector of employment for Milwaukee. It's about our region's ability to tell our story visually through film and online. And this is, if we don't invest in this space in Milwaukee, we're gonna have a significant brain drain problem. And that's why I emphasize the fact that, you know, Carol's here.
Still lives here?
Carol still lives here, and I know I'm doing my job if Carol stays here. So we'll check in on that.
Final clip we want to show you is from a documentary about Sammy Davis Jr., I've Gotta Be Me, done by African-American filmmaker Sam Pollard, very well-known filmmaker. This is something that's done through your Lens program.
Black Lens.
Black Lens.
Yeah.
What is that and why do you have that?
So the Black Lens program was created 5 years ago. Our co-programmer for that and creator of the program, Dr. Dante McFadden, is here with us today, and he's part of Marquette University. Hi, Dante. But the Black Lens program is twofold in its mission. One, presenting the best African-American cinema that we can on screen and celebrating that, bringing those filmmakers here, invigorating that community of filmmakers. But it's also about very much diversifying the audience of Milwaukee film. And it's a program that has grown beyond our wildest imagination in just 5 years and is becoming a true national leader this year, receiving support from the Academy, the Oscars organization, HBO, and many others.
Inclusion is a big part of the mission.
Absolutely, and that's throughout the entire film festival. And as much as it might seem obvious that film festivals are inclusive and diverse, it's actually not really the case throughout the country. When you go to film festival, the audience is largely very similar in skin color and background and demographics. And the content, even though it is international in nature, it isn't necessarily that inclusive, and that's something we're fighting very hard for and are by no means where we want to be long term, even as a staff makeup. But we're aware and we're working really hard on this.
Let's take a quick look at the trailer for Sammy Davis Jr., I Gotta Be Me.
I'm colored, Jewish, and Puerto Rican. When I move into a neighborhood, I wipe it out.
Sammy Davis Jr.'s whole life was about confronting obstacles.
Mr. Bojangles, Mr. Bojangles, Mr. Bojangles, come back and dance.
His gift was his talent. The curse was being black in America.
It's no fun to walk into a place you're going to play and be told that you've had 14 bomb threats. Even if you win, you don't win.
He said, these people are going to love me as an entertainer no matter how much they may hate me as a black.
If I could have lived in the 20s with Valentino, I would have had the leopards on a leash, you know, walking down the street.
Sammy was show business from the tip of his toes to the top of his head.
If you played it for her, you can play it for me.
Sammy's like, I'm a black guy, but I'm going to imitate a white guy.
You dirty rat.
This was really groundbreaking at the time he did it. Hey, that was Sinatra, those guys increased his cool factor.
He's one of the boys.
We get together like glue.
Sammy saw himself as somebody who was breaking new ground for black people, but there was definitely the perception that he was a sellout.
Anytime you walk down the street and your own people turn you away, then all the money, the diamonds, the fame, the fortune mean absolutely nothing.
He couldn't be accepted in the white community, he couldn't be accepted in the black community, but he had a vision for himself that was bigger than white or black.
And I would like to sing, if you would like for me to sing.
And the kiss was his idea.
1, 2, 3.
He was bigger than life. He was funny, he was smart, he was curious, he was loving, he was self-destructive.
He, again and again, will say, I'm not going to do it your way.
I was always convinced he was going to die on stage because it was the only place he was safe.
There were things about him that would infuriate you. There were other things about him that would make you stand up and applaud.
He was a wonderful, one-of-a-kind comet that flew past the Earth way too quickly.
Those are just 3 of the more than 300 films that'll be shown at this year's festival. I want to spend a little time with you, Jonathan, in our remaining time talking about the mission, and you've talked about this, certainly touched on this so far today, but the mission of Milwaukee Film, and it is a larger mission. It's a mission to make Milwaukee a creative hub, to be a place where people stay as they pursue careers in the creative arts. You've received some help in the last year or two. County Executive Chris Abeley's been helpful.
Absolutely.
But John Ridley Jr. Has been very helpful. And for people in this room, many people know who John is. John is a terrifically talented young guy. I remember interviewing John when he was writing novels. This was a few years ago, and he actually doing some stand-up comedy. But he's gone on to win an Academy Award for his work on 12 Years a Slave, powerful series on ABC, American Crime, that he was a creator, director, writer for that series. John's from Mequon originally, but he grew up in this community, and he wants to give back. How did that connection develop, and what specifically is he doing?
It's incredible for Milwaukee that John has chosen to engage in this way, and really exciting. The connection to him started when we presented a film of his in the festival, Jimmy, All Is By My Side. I think it was 15.
Jimi Hendrix film.
Yes, a biopic on Jimi Hendrix. And he was able to come out for the centerpiece screening in the festival. And I think he was really surprised and excited by what he saw happening in the film community here and with Milwaukee Film. Shortly after that, we invited him to join the board of directors of Milwaukee Film, our nonprofit. And he also had a relationship and a connection immediately to Chris Abeley, county executive, but also a great philanthropist, co-founder of Milwaukee Film. And what John wanted to do was to leverage his career success to do some unique business opportunity in Milwaukee. And we're so lucky that he chose to do this in Milwaukee, but he is creating a new business, independent, separate from us, but it's gonna be a creative hub for southeastern Wisconsin that not only is gonna help to invigorate the creative economy here, but critically is gonna push out the story of what's happening here. And he has an incredible brand and an incredible voice that people pay attention to and large media organizations write about. And just this weekend is gonna be the launch of No Studios, which we're participating as a tenant. So we signed a 10-year lease to be a tenant, moved our offices there so all of our employees work out of.
You're over in the Pabst complex.
Yep, in the Pabst complex, great old, and I love this story. It's a 40,000 square foot building, and it was actually a testing laboratory for beer recipes originally. And there's just something cool about that ties to creativity and film. But this No Studios launches this weekend, and I think it's a missing ingredient to the creative economy and specifically the film industry here that, when you look at the story of Austin's rise as a film community, there were a couple of filmmakers there, Richard Linklater, Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez, who helped push that brand and experience out there. But to have somebody like John Ridley open a business here, I think it's going to have an incredible catalytic effect, and we're just so thrilled to be able to participate in his and Chris's vision.
That's great. I'll talk about the other big thing that happened for Milwaukee Film, and that's the Oriental Theater. So you guys are now running the Oriental Theater.
I have a few more gray hairs.
Well, it's not a small decision. I mean, this has a lot of implications.
Yep.
Talk to us, first of all, about all the great stuff, and then we'll talk about some of the harder stuff.
So it's a 91-year-old theater. I think it's one of the best in the world. I've been lucky enough to go to film festivals around the globe, and I'll take that theater over any other. And I just love it from the standpoint of, especially during the festival, when you fill the main auditorium, 1,000 people in there, you got glowing Buddhas on the walls, this great ceiling, and the gargoyles on the ceiling. And you bring somebody who's never been to Milwaukee before, a filmmaker, may have their preconception of what Milwaukee is like, and you take them into that full auditorium, and you have to help them pick their jaw up off the floor. And it's what we intend to really try to brand our experience around, our organization around. But at the core of our relationship to it was a challenge, and that was we did not have a good relationship to the operator of the theater, not the owner, the previous lessor. And they, for whatever reason, had some practices that really restricted our growth, even just the ability to mount the film festival every year at the Oriental Theater. That was a company called Landmark Theaters, ultimately owned by Mark Cuban, in the news a lot these days, but Dallas Mavericks owner, Shark Tank guy. And they nationally have taken a little bit of a predatory relationship with film festivals, and it's a little mind-boggling. But we, somewhat shrewdly figured out a way where the owner of the building loved the film festival, really looked at it from a standpoint of what could happen in Milwaukee if Milwaukee Film revitalized and utilized this institution year-round and invested in it. And the lease just happened to be expiring July 1 of 2018, this year. We found out about 4 years ago and worked incredibly hard to convince the owner that they should rent to us as opposed to a national corporation. And that's a risk to rent to a young nonprofit as opposed to a national corporation in over 40 markets that ultimately has Mark Cuban at the top of it. But I give a lot of credit to Newland Enterprises that bought into the vision and saw it. And now we have an anchor for the film festival, and we can be on all 3 screens. We were only on 2 previously. Plus, we can revitalize this institution. We've already put $2 million into it. We're intending to put more than $4 million additional dollars into it. Incredible philanthropic support for this effort. Chris Abley was a major donor to it. Incredible Marianne and Sheldon Lubar were incredible supporters to it. Donald and Donna Baumgartner, as well as the Hertzfeld Foundation. And we're going to announce where we're at for the fundraising campaign at the festival, but we think we're going to finish that $10 million campaign in short order. And what we want to do, we're not there yet. And this is some of that gray hair, but we're not there yet. But what we want to do is really turn that cinema into an everyday cultural institution in Milwaukee that shows the great cinema that it has shown in the past and that we've opened up with, like Black Klansman or The Wife, you know, the bigger budget, independent, international, or documentary films. But then every day of the week, every screening, do some unique programming, mini festivals throughout the year. And that, to me, as strong as an arts community and cultural community in Milwaukee, I think the film exhibition community has been a little bit behind. And if you compare our year-round film exhibition culture with similar sized cities in the country, we're not as strong. And I've always found that sort of, I don't know if it's ironic or just interesting, because in so many of the other cultural spaces, we're so far ahead. If you look at the great, incredible museum we have, the symphony, the incredible theater acting community. But film has been a little bit behind, but you know, we're trying to catch up.
So another $4 million still in renovations yet to come?
Yes, we for any you know, women can now go to the bathroom on the first floor.
That was always that was always just a little strange, you know.
91. It only took 91 years to figure that out, that the theater should offer that.
You know, there's another part to this discussion, though, and that is the vision you just laid out, what that could mean or is already meaning to that part of Milwaukee, that Lower East Side neighborhood of Milwaukee. What do you envision for that neighborhood?
Well, for us to reach our sort of destination, which I look at as, you know, turning the Milwaukee Film Festival into a destination film festival that the industry and even tourists want to attend and make it part of their calendar annually. We need a hub. We want the film festival to continue to be throughout the community of Milwaukee, and we want to spread that, both inside and outside more, but we need a hub. And to have a hub, it's been interesting for those who travel around the east side or live around there. There's been a lot of businesses that have shut down recently. But it's exciting is that they're reopening as more of neighborhood, arts, restaurant. The neighborhood is transitioning truly from, I think, a college bar scene to more of a lived-in arts neighborhood. I love the Black Cat Alley project. That's right in the alleyway behind the Oriental Theater. And we want to turn that whole community into, during the 15 days of the festival, sort of like a film village. We'd love to figure out how to get 6, 7, 8 screens in and around that neighborhood long-term, create a true hub, and then year-round filter out into the community with all of the mini film festivals and different unique offerings we can do. As part of this, I joined the East Side Bid Board, some public service. That's been enlightening and interesting. And
God bless you for your public service.
Yes.
Yeah.
I enjoy it quite a bit, and it's just heartening to know that now the neighborhood really views the Oriental Theater as like the driver of the neighborhood. And you know, I knew going into this that we'd become the custodian of such an important icon for Milwaukee. I don't think I fully understood what it also means for the businesses and the local businesses in the neighborhood, and that's special and important.
Give me a sense. I was struck by something you just said there about you'd love someday to have 7 or 8 screens in that area. How would you do that? Do you know what that looks like in just sort of a general way?
I always point to the example of the Sundance Film Festival. There's not actually 40 cinemas in Park City, Utah. How do they do that? Well, they take, like this year, they had a new venue, which was a closed down sports authority. Like all you need to make a cinema is a large rectangle that you can darken, that you can control the access to in and out, and if you can invest in it, it's not necessarily cheap, but if you can invest in it, you can create a true, well-established, very technically proficient cinema if you have a rectangle. And so we're looking at and have been exploring ways and options for creating pop-up cinemas, both on the east side and around Milwaukee. Frankly, we would have launched a couple of these already if not for this 5-year adventure to secure and then open and launch the Oriental Theater. But I've told more than a couple of people that we're committed to next year launching our first pop-up cinema.
Let's take care of a little business before we go. There are probably people in this room who are interested in knowing exactly which theaters around the area are going to be showing films associated with the festival. Also want to know about tickets. So what can you tell us, first of all, about the venues?
Absolutely, and sort of our first sort of pop-up, it will become a permanent venue, but it's literally the first thing that's going to happen there is the Jan Sear Cinema Studio, which is going to be on the 6th floor of the Kenilworth building, the UWM building, right half a block from the Oriental Theater. We'll also be at the Time Cinema. We'll be at the Avalon Theater in Bayview. We'll be at the Fox Bay Cinema Grill on Silver Spring. And so, really trying to get into different neighborhoods throughout Milwaukee. Best way to learn about the film festival is either the guide. We'll have a bunch of these as you walk out today. Ticketing, I think, is on page 18 in the guide, but also online, mkefilm.org. The best way to experience the festival, I always advocate, is a pass. Show up to any movie, even science fair, 15 minutes before it starts, and you get a seat. But you can buy individual tickets for any movies in the festival for $12 for the general public.
So my final question, then we'll take a few questions from the audience. Look down the road for me for just a moment, 5 or 10 years out. What do you see, not just the Milwaukee Film Festival being, but what do you see Milwaukee Film being?
I shared some of that before, and I think Destination Film Festival that truly does have an industry component where some films are premiering here and being sold or bought or discovered, but also tremendous traffic in that sort of corridor on the east side. Would love to have that. And then mini theaters around the city where you have single screen cinemas in near neighborhoods. It's really, there's a hurdle to get somebody to go to the film festival the first time because, it's a bit daunting. There's 300 films you've never heard of. And if we can put cinemas in neighborhoods, it's a good way to get a new person to try it out. So Destination Festival, but also, I'd love to have a few more screens even that we operate year round. But we're going to take care of the Oriental Theater first.
Okay. Let's take a few questions from the audience. If you're in the seating bowl down here, you can just press on that black contraption in front of you, and Ryan will also amplify your questions over there. He's great at that. And if you're in the back, just raise your hand, and Ryan will hold a microphone for you. So anybody who has a question about the festival, yes, we'll start over there.
I'm wondering about the restorative justice that you're showing on, I think it's a Saturday, and you're following it up with an actual restorative justice circle. I wonder how that came about and how you organized the circle and what you hope to accomplish.
So if you turn, when you get the book,
sure,
I'll repeat the question. So it was a question about, we're doing a restorative justice experience at the festival, and it's connected to a film screening in the festival, and the person was wondering how we came about doing that. It's an excellent question, and it's sort of a layered answer. The first thing I'll say is that when I say education, community outreach is a part of our mission, we had an experience, it was like year 2 or 3 of the film festival when we screened an education film called Waiting for Superman. And when we screened it, we didn't want to just screen it. We wanted to create a Milwaukee conversation around it. And I remember one of the meetings was actually here, I think at the law school, in convening partners to how are we going to create a panel and a talk back and awareness about, education, strengths and struggles here in Milwaukee. And it was opposite a Packers game on a Sunday that the film showed. And there were 1,000 people there, and then there were 400 plus people for a panel. And it was again that moment where it's like, wow, what kind of power does this festival have or does film have to convene? And so what we now have is a section in the festival we call forums, which are organized experiences extending from the films in the festival. So we don't predetermine what we do any year. We allow the film content to speak for itself, and then we take what the content of that film is and try to create an experience in Milwaukee. We ourselves are not necessarily experts in this or in this practice, but we have on our team for the festival, leading our forum section is Dr. Monique Liston, who does this work in the community year-round, who organized the forum section. And there's a great film called Circles, which is just about this practice. So it's in the documentary festival favorites section. You can see it, and then for free attend in the lounge this actual talk and discussion. And again, page 21 is the whole forum section in the guide.
Yeah, and you can pick up one of these as you leave today. There will be all of those programs available. Other questions? Yes.
You spoke about your relationship with Landmark and also expressed concern about not being a wide variety of films generally in the Milwaukee area. What sort of relationship, if any, do you have with theater or operating companies like Marcus, AMC, and so on?
It's a great question. I think it's a very different business. The big budget Hollywood film distribution model. In the early years of Milwaukee Film, we were actually inside of two Marcus cinemas, the Marcus North Shore and the Marcus Ridge Cinema. And we didn't see the attendance growing. And what we found is we were a little bit lost in sort of the model of a multiplex environment where you have 8, 10, 12, 15 screens, and the festival itself would only be 1 or 2 or 3 of the screens. And A, you feel a little dwarfed, and B, it doesn't necessarily have that special atmosphere. And what we prioritize is cinemas more like in communities where the doors open up to the street, where you go to a film and then you go to the neighboring establishment and business after the film, and you really have that vibe of that street level sort of village atmosphere. And that's what we sort of prioritize in the cinema going experience. We put huge investments into different aspects of the theater. Our largest expenditure this year has been in the sound and projection equipment in the theater, and we have several more that we'll be doing. And that's what we prioritize in terms of presentation at our cinema.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? Yes.
I saw on Facebook somebody had seen Citizen Coke a number of years ago, and his testimony was it totally changed his life. He became an activist after seeing that movie. So I'd like you to speak to how movies can actually change people's lives and how you're using the forums and some of the other things surrounding movies to make a difference in the community for the better, such as Don Troy Hamilton's movie last year.
Yeah. Well, movies have changed my life. It's my source of inspiration, and I'm pretty affected by the current political environment, and I definitely find solace in some of the movies that you'll see in the festival. But some of my favorite stories that we get, and we actually get a lot of these every year, are about how people are touched by the movies they see. Some of them more, political in nature and activist in nature, and some even just life, career path or choice. One of my favorite stories I received was, I'm trying to remember, I think it was Spinning Tables was the name of the film. It was in our Film Feast section. several years ago, and this is a section for culinary aficionados, and 6 films all around different food experiences or people passionate about food, a mixture of fiction and documentary films. And I got this really long message about like 4 months after the festival one year from a mother who had a teenage son that she described as sort of drifting in life and not committed to education, sports, or any activities. And she took him to this documentary about 3 different restaurants and about the behind-the-scenes nature of it and the chefs and the cooks. And she said that this was an incredible transformative experience for her son, who had now quickly gone to enroll in some cooking program. They traveled around the country to the 3 restaurants that were profiled in the film. And it's just sort of, I would never have expected that a film like that would have such an impact on a youth's life. But, you know, for me, there is no more powerful medium than cinema. It is this weird communion with your brain in the dark that you have. It's, you know, manipulative at times, and in the right hands, you can get across all sorts of different messages and stories. But it's this weird communion that you have when you watch a film that combines all the art forms. But then when it's over, I think the festival activates by how we talk about the film we just saw, what happens in the line, how we tell people about the films that we just saw. And that's where the power of the film festival comes in.
That's great. Other questions? Yeah.
Wondering about the film, The First Patient, which was banned on Facebook.
Yes.
And I'm wondering why you chose it.
Well, one, it's a work of a great local filmmaker.
Chip Duncan, right?
Chip Duncan. And it's a film, it's extraordinary. I don't understand. I mean, I understand what they're saying, but I can't believe it's been
Chip says
banned
it's
on
life-affirming, just the opposite of what you would think. He says it's
I've seen it, and it was for me.
Tell people what it's about.
So First Patient is a film that follows first-year medical students at the Mayo Clinic as they go through the process of doing autopsies and an anatomy study for the first time. And it's really about the journey of that student from when you first see them before they've done this to after they've done this, and how it affects them and how they understand the body. But me watching it, and I've always been a little sensitive to depictions of the body, and it was sort of eye-opening, and I felt more connected to myself and my human condition and my body after having seen the film. But if you look at, like, I don't know what the names of these, the body exhibits that they do throughout the world, I mean, it's so delicate and smart, and the way it's shown and it's handled. And it's really, you know, it's a human journey, it's a spiritual journey, and it's just one of those things where you just can't understand why a decision like that would be made. But this is supporting a great local filmmaker. We're really honored to show it and premiere it in the festival. And it's going to be shown around the country and also as a medical teaching tool now. So it's the first time anyone's ever had access to this this part of medical school.
Yeah, Chip is a friend, and so I mean, as he was putting this together, he was telling me about, you know, he had to get the Mayo Clinic's permission to do this. I mean, it's not some sensational, you know, film. It's something quite other than that. So.
I asked the question because my husband appears in it.
Oh, okay.
As a donor.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yep.
Live donor. Okay. Anybody else with questions? Yes, I'm sorry. Let's go back there.
Many of us go to many of the films, and we have to watch the introduction over and over and over. So curious, as you think about how you put that introduction together, do you think about the fact that many will watch it many, many, many times?
Absolutely, we do. You know, there's 2 notes that I'd say is last year we changed something that I think was pretty positive, which is that the vast majority of the introduction shows before we even talk and before the show start time now, to where the only thing that shows before the film is the sponsor trailer and then the title card for the film. And that was, you know, to help bridge that gap of experience. But You know, this film festival would not happen without the incredible support of our sponsors. You know, historically, the organization has been run on a 30-70 split, 30% earned revenue or ticket sales, and 70% fundraised. And I mean, we wouldn't exist without that support. And, you know, it's a core to us that we do honor that. If you go to film festivals around the world, they all have the same type of system. I think we do it in a pretty creative, unique way, but it is still something we look very closely at. But I appreciate the question.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just curious with your future view, if you're going to buy up some land and build a big parking ramp.
I am looking very closely at this, actually. It is a challenge on the east side, absolutely, around the Oriental Theater. There's a lot I would love to get my hands on across from Good City Brewing that doesn't seem to ever be used by a company that owns it nearby. But we are investigating this. There's several different parking options on the east side. There's like 8 different lots. Unfortunately, they're all smallish. But if you look both on our website and on the eastside.org website, there's a couple of new parking options that have been launched. There's this new app called Park X, which can allow you to park in the clock tower building on the corner of North and Prospect. But that is something that we're absolutely looking into.
Anybody else? All right, we'll wrap things up. Again, thanks very much for your interest and your attention today. It's nice to do an event where we're not talking about politics or...
I can talk about politics.
I know. You know, everybody seems in a good mood. Everybody's happy. Just maybe leave it right there. So anyhow, again, we appreciate you being with us today. And most of all, our thanks to Jonathan Jackson. The festival begins on the 18th and runs until November 1st. Jonathan, thanks very much.
Thank you, Mike.